All right, everyone. Welcome once again to the Faces of Business. I am your host, Damon Pistolka, and I am excited today because we've got none other than John Browning with us. Today, we're going to be talking about financial and financial planning for a great life after the exit. John is a financial and retirement planning expert, a financial speaker. He's an author and podcast host. John, thanks for being here today, man.
Hey, it's great to be here. I'm happy we finally got together. We had some fun with scheduling, didn't we?
Yeah, some technical difficulties, man, but that's the way it goes. We get those things taken care of, and away we roll. So, John, we always like to start the show out the same way by letting you tell us a bit about your background and how you got into helping people the way you are today.
Sure. This was something that was born over 3 decades ago, and I started out in a Wall Street firm. Hello, how can I help you today? On the phones, and taking 120 calls a day and that kind of thing, customer service. And from there, just sort of learned the financial trade, customer service first, analysis, security analysis, portfolio analysis, risk management, and eventually became one of those annoying guys that you see on the movies, and corner office in Wall Street, and really that really hit me after 9/11, which we just passed, of course.
Yeah.
The anniversary. And those of us who lived that, we can't get through that day without thinking about it. And I was actually on a plane yesterday, and I was just thinking about it, man. It's just strange being on a plane on 9/11, and it will be for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
But that's when I kind of started this whole idea of I've given too much of my life away to Wall Street and working and flying around the country and away from my kids. So I started the planning process, but that was 15 years before I actually exited. And what I love about what I do now is that you don't have to have millions and millions of dollars to talk to me. And I tell people it's a lot less fun, or it's a lot more fun, but a lot less lucrative, which is fine because, my kids are, for the most part, out of the house, and I can afford to do that. And it's just, like I said, it's just a lot of fun using what I learned on Wall Street, which was great. Got to sit across from some of the smartest people, frankly, in the world, and learn from them. And now I get to apply that to individuals.
Yeah, very cool. So were you actually working in New York on 9/11?
I was actually on the trading desk in Chicago.
Oh, okay.
And this was back when you had the actual phones, you didn't have the headsets. Yeah. And we would do this, you'd have the one side of the trade here and the other side on this, and then you'd flip them.
Yeah.
And one of the gentlemen was in the second tower, worked at Morgan Stanley at the time. And the other one was in the Bank of New York, which was just about a block away. And we just heard a boom, and I heard it through the phones, and we were just kind of like, what was that? I don't know. What was that? I don't know. And then the guy from the Bank of New York down the block said, well, it looks like, I'll never forget it. He said, it looks like a ticker tape parade, but I don't remember anything happening that would be a ticker tape parade because the papers were falling. And that's what he was seeing a block away. And then, of course, it came across the TV about 5-10 minutes later.
Yeah. Wow. It is. So it's a day that you just remember. And people that are, old enough to remember being relatively close to being an adult that day, you just remember where you were and how it changed.
Yeah.
It changed everything.
Yeah. It was very surreal. I remember the day that it happened. It was like, you didn't know what to do. You were just sort of walking around in a daze, and they sent us all home. But then they started to realize, hey, this completely turned the financial system upside down for several days. All of the people that worked in New York couldn't work.
Yes.
Even if you weren't in the towers, you couldn't go back downtown.
Mm-hmm.
People in Chicago, especially the executives in Chicago,
Mm-hmm.
for the next year, our life was just a blur, putting things sort of back together and figuring out how we were going to move forward, in addition to trying to help our people.
Yeah.
That really went through it right there on the ground.
Yeah. Quite a thing. And it's hard not to really think deeply about it.
Yeah.
Because it was the first time for you. I was talking to somebody about this yesterday. It was the first time when something really like this happened on our soil.
That's right.
United
Yeah.
States.
I mean, Pearl Harbor, but that was different. There's just something about that.
On the mainland. On the mainland,
on the mainland, and there was a war going on.
Yeah.
Near Fort Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
But this was really completely unexpected by anybody that I know, anyway.
Yeah. And the way it's changed everything, and then subsequent events and all that. So and it's interesting now too that we have a generation or even more of people that have grown up with this just the way it is.
My 17, soon to be 18-year-old daughter had to write a paper on 9/11, and of course she doesn't know anything.
Yeah,
she really doesn't. She doesn't remember anything about it, and so she said, "I need to interview somebody who lived through 9/11. Can I interview you?" And I said, "Well, yeah, and I can put you in touch with people who lived it on the ground as well." So that's kind of strange. It's part of getting old, maybe. But it was really strange for me to have that.
Yeah. Well, it's we're past that. It brought us together in a lot of ways, and I think we're going to be stronger eventually because of it, and that's good. So as you were saying though, the 9/11 was kind of a turning point, and you said, I need to do something a little bit differently, but it took you 15 years.
You need to plan.
What was your planning and executing? Did you really see yourself doing what you're doing today, and that was part of the overall plan, or were there a lot of zigzags on the way there?
I think this was something I always thought would be very interesting, because I used to travel around and I would speak in front of investment advisors, and I would look at their their bigger portfolios. They would bring to me and say, "Hey, what would you do?" And I always thought that would be just really fun for me. I would really enjoy that, and really seeing the impact, as opposed to being behind the big portfolio and not seeing how it impacts people's lives. So it was always part of the plan, but I didn't know how I would get there. So there were a lot of zigs and zags, and was way harder than I thought, of course. To get done.
Yeah. So you've written a book, Build a Life, Not a Portfolio, Amazon bestseller. What inspired you to do that?
I had a lot of my friends say, you should just write a book. You should just write, because I used to write things every morning. I'd do the morning update when I was on Wall Street, and I would send that out to all our salespeople, and all the executives would get it as well. And that kind of grew, and they said, you should write a book about like your experiences. And I was always, no, I'm not going to do that. Plus, it's really hard to do when you work for a big firm, because then it's got to go through compliance. Right?
Yeah.
So when I started my own firm, a gentleman got in touch with me, and name of Michael DeLon, great guy. And he said, why don't you write a book? And I said, I don't have time. I'm starting a business. He said, have you ever started? I was like, yeah, I kind of put some thoughts down. He said, why don't you talk to me? Why don't you talk to me and my editor? He said, because I find your story interesting, and we'll do the writing. You send us what you have. We'll do the editing. And they put it together. My thoughts were all jumbled and all over the place. And they put it together, and they said, what do you think? We think it would make a great book, and we'd love to help you. And so there it ended up. And it ended up being an Amazon bestseller, which was kind of weird and cool at the same time.
Yeah. Yep. So now your practice, tell us about what you're doing today, because I think this really brings us full circle around to how your Wall Street experience, the trading experience, your desire to change your lifestyle, and how you're helping people today. Kind of, it really brings us full circle and brings a lot of meaning to it.
Yeah, I think I'm a very, shall we say, different financial advisor, wealth manager than, I'm more like a family office, frankly, because you won't find mutual funds in my portfolios. You just won't find that thing, because I understand and I know how to put together portfolios, is what I did for 30 years.
Yeah.
And we really dig down deep and start with why, like the Simon Sinek.
Mm-hmm.
And I become the why guy, because it doesn't matter how much money you have if you're not happy. It really doesn't. More money is just going to make you less happy,
Yes.
more unhappy. If you're happy and you have money, you can use that money to do things that make you happy, and that works. But you got to know why you're amassing all this money. I've known multi, 100 million heirs that were just miserable. And that's the real thing that I wanted to help solve. So I end up with a group of clients that are in that don't have 100 million plus. I'm happy with that. That's fine. They have maybe they have a few million, maybe they have a few 100,000, but they're just really good people. I get to pick and choose my clients. So
Yes.
if I tell people I will talk to anybody, which is another thing you can't do on Wall Street.
Mm-hmm.
But if you find a really great person, like one of my podcasts, I'll only take 6 at a time. I don't know why I came up with 6, but I take 6 people who I really, frankly, I can't put food on my table, but they need help.
Mm-hmm.
And they're willing and consistently working towards something. And so I'll take 6 people. And I did a podcast with 3 of them one time, and they just told their story, which was just that's really what it's all about. If you can help somebody who's struggled and finally got their life together and is trying to get ahead, or maybe a young person that no financial advisor is going to talk to, but they're really dedicated to consistently doing something with and preparing for retirement, that's a lot of fun for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you can make a difference in someone's life,
Right.
that a meaningful difference. Because
Right.
another 5 million for someone that's got 100 million. Yeah, that's nice and everything. But, 20% more for somebody that's looking to be able to retire is a huge thing.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Well, as we talk about this, topic of the day is planning for a great life after the exit.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to you talk to business owners, you talk to, all kinds of different business owners. What are some of the common things that you see on that first conversation when you're talking to someone that's contemplating a business exit or just gone through one?
So, yeah, probably the most common thing is they really haven't thought a whole lot about it. They just started thinking about it and they want to do it tomorrow, but they haven't. And what it really takes, especially if you're a business owner, to do it right, to start thinking about it and start managing your business and managing your finances 5 and 10 years before that, is really the perfect way to do it. If you give me 5 years, we can really make a difference. If you give me 10 years, we can really make a difference. We can do, it can be just entirely different. Your experience can be entirely different and better if you start 10 years out. But most people that I talk to are like a year away or something like that. And we're scrambling and doing the best that we can. So that's the number one thing. They do such a good job with their business. They're very successful in their business, or even if they're a busy executive and they've made all this money and everybody pretty much knows I should contribute to my 401k. I should do a few things. But then it's like, wait a second, my 401k, it's all taxable now. So my $2 million that I've saved in my 401k is all taxable money coming to me in retirement. Well, what does that do? Well, that raises the amount. If I'm taking the amount that I want to take to live my best life, as I define it, it might put me in a whole different tax bracket. It might raise my Medicare costs, right? Because I'm in a different bracket there.
Yeah.
And my Social Security might be taxed, probably will be. If I haven't put money in the right types of accounts and had some accounts doing one thing and other accounts doing another thing, putting those puzzle pieces together well in advance can make hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of difference. And people just, it's not, I do it every day, so I think about it every day. Most people don't. Most people are doing what they do great.
Yeah. Yeah. So as you're helping people do this now, what are some of the things that you see trends in the industry that you're excited about that can you're just excited about in the industry right now?
I like there's a lot of things I don't like that I see that are going on out there, but
we'll talk about those too.
Well, I think, I'm a big innovation and investing guy. I talk about that a lot, but investing in innovation has to be done the right way. You have to understand it. You have to understand the cycle behind it, and you need to understand what's profitable and what's not profitable innovation.
Yeah.
So we look at what then happens within the financial industry, and we see artificial intelligence coming in, and what I tend to see is I tend to take these portfolios over, because it's simple, right? It's kind of like the whole idea that, I'll just invest in the S&P 500 and we're good, right? That may be fine when you're 20, maybe even 30, but there's some real things we should talk about if that's all your strategy is. I want to make things as simple as possible, but no simpler. I think Einstein maybe said that. So the idea behind just putting your portfolio into an artificial intelligence and having that run the portfolio, it just, in my experience and opinion, it just ends up being a mess. And just as an example, one that I recently got had over 300 different positions in there in the portfolio. Some of them were less than 0.5%. So I'm not sure what good that was really doing.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, if you invest in the S&P 500, you kind of have the same thing. So the definition is you're going to have a lot of things that are just junk, right? And but the good news is you'll have all the good stuff too. So, so AI is something that I think is overused and over-relied on, not just in the financial industry, but other places as well. I'm excited about it, though. I'm excited about what it can do and how it can make you more productive. But I think just AI without the other AI, which is actual intelligence, I think one in the absence of the other is not a good thing. So that's one thing I don't like that I see. And it tends to make us complacent and think everything's okay when it might not be. Let's see. In the industry, I see one of the things that I see, and people will disagree with me on this, so apologize if I offend anyone, but I do see like the charge by the hour folks. So they'll do investment advice by the hour, and there's some good folks doing this, good people doing this. But what I think that opens you up to is, number one, I don't want to call my financial advisor when I should because I don't want to pay them. Number two, it starts going the opposite direction, right? So if you've ever worked with a lawyer, sorry to all the lawyers out there. I mean, if they think about your case for 5 minutes, late at night, then they're going to charge you for that. So it lends itself to, wait a second, you charged me for the 15 minutes, I just called you and you charged me for half an hour or what, it just lends to that kind of stuff, and the record keeping and the mess that is likely to create doesn't seem like a good thing. I like the assets under management. And I think one of the things that kind of went away was the commission-based structure, which had its issues, absolutely. But if you think about it, on the fixed income side, you buy somebody a CD, it might be exactly the right thing for their portfolio, but you're going to pay 3 or 4% for that. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me either. So I
Mhm.
think the regulations are good and sometimes well intended, and then they get distorted. You put humans and people who are, unfortunately, there are bad actors in every single industry out there,
Mhm.
and they'll twist whatever they come up with, they're going to twist it.
Yeah.
So I think it's really difficult for individuals to really find someone that they can trust, that has the experience that they need, and sometimes the new technology gets in the way. On the
Yeah.
flip side of that, you can now do the same things I was doing in billion-dollar portfolios in $100,000 portfolio. And
Yeah.
that's what I really like, because I can do some pretty cool things for people that didn't even exist even 5 years ago.
Yeah. That is pretty crazy. In 5 years, there's been big changes like that.
Big changes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's exciting. So when you're helping people like this, what do you enjoy most about it?
I love when I can tell. I mean, I've got stories on either side, but I think my favorite part is when somebody comes to me, and I'm thinking of one individual right now, comes to me and they need to retire because of a health issue.
Mhm.
A health issue has come up, and they were my client for a while, and they're like, I know the plan was I was going to retire in 5 years. I got to retire now. I've got this issue. I just can't work anymore.
Yeah.
To be able to say, you know what, your plan is flexible because we planned before, and this is how we're going to solve this issue, and this is what your paycheck is going to be every month. And then see their face light up because they were devastated, they were so worried about that. That's priceless when you can do
Yes.
that. Or
Yes.
you take a mom who was a single mom and raised 3 kids on her own, spent all her money on her kids to get
Yes.
them
Yeah.
wherever they needed to go, and to be able to take her and her situation at, like, say 50 or 55 years old with zero, and suddenly be able to show her a path that,
Wow.
yeah, but it's going to take some time, but yes, there's a path here, and then show it working. And just every time you get on the phone, she's like, I can't believe it, I can't believe it, and she's overjoyed. And that's so much fun.
Yes, I can imagine. I can
Yeah.
imagine. And it is about helping people, see things that they don't. And that's uh it's got to be a lot different for you being able to help who you want, how you want, than when you were working with the big firms and you don't even see honestly who owns that money even when it comes down to
Right.
it.
Yeah, that's right. You don't even know.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Um So, what are some of the things that people may not be thinking about in, business owners? They're getting ready for this exit. They're just thinking about it. It could be 5 years, it could be 10 years away. What's one or two things that you go, if they just thought about this and talk to somebody, it would be a huge start?
One is the taxability of what they're going to have. I tell people taxes are a thing; they're not the only thing.
Yeah.
So it's not, I've seen people hold on to a business or a particular stock or whatever because, oh, I don't want to pay the taxes. And then you see the stock just, plummet, especially like busy executives that have a stock purchase program through their company. They end up with this huge slug of XYZ shares because they work.
Yes.
I don't want to sell any of it because of tax complications. There are strategies, there are tactics we can use to help you with that,
Wow.
right? Don't leave yourself overexposed to that. And then with the small business owner or mid-sized business owner, they may get, maybe it's a couple $1,000,000 if they do it right. So one of the things that small business owners will tend to do is they won't W-2 themselves. They'll just take a draw or whatever, which is a fantastic strategy at some points in your journey. However, as you get closer to selling that business, you want to show some profitability, because they're also trying to avoid taxes. So they may actually, hey, it's great, we're not showing any profitability so we can lower our taxes. That's fantastic. Great. If you're getting ready to sell a business, you want to show profitability. Because normally they're sold based on, X times sales or X times revenue, all of that stuff, depending on the different business. So thinking about that. And then when you sell it, how you sell it. Will you get a big lump sum payment, which is all taxable all at once? Do you sell it over a series of payments? There's even ways that if you don't want to do a seller finance deal, which I completely understand, and that can be really tough and maybe not a great idea. Sometimes it is. But if you don't want to do that, to put the money into a different entity, there's strategies for not getting it all at once and then having to pay massive taxes all at once. The next thing, again, tax related, is a business owner gets to the point where they, number one, want to pass it to family and then figure out, I haven't talked to my family about that and nobody wants it.
Yes.
Or number two, have an event that they can't work anymore and they're the key person in the business and they have to sell it at fire sale prices, and they have to sell it however they can sell it. And then maybe they even pass away. And then the family has to sell it, but they don't get the cash enough to even cover the taxes. And suddenly you can have a family go literally bankrupt.
Wow.
I've seen this happen. So not planning has just a myriad of different consequences that you may never anticipate. We all think we're immortal, we're never going to pass away, but it can happen in an instant, right? We hate to talk about it, but
yeah. Well, you make a great point here, and the taxability of proceeds. Most people have not thought about that in our experience at all, and to the extent it affects your net proceeds from, it's significant. I mean, it's significant money if you don't plan ahead. And as I've learned over the years, if you're selling something that's multiple tens of millions of dollars, and you start a decade ahead with the planning and the preparation and doing everything you can, it can make millions of dollars of difference in the tax.
That's right.
And I had no idea starting at how much of a difference that would be on a business that size. But take that down to somebody like you said is selling a $2 million business. It can still make hundreds of thousands of dollars of difference in what they take home if they start planning ahead of time.
Right.
And then I'm just not even thinking about, you brought up the thing about family. If you just want to transfer some of the wealth to your family and doing that the right way, there's just so much to think about that. The taxability is what you brought up. And I'm just doubly emphasizing that because we see that so much. You go, wow, I'm getting X million dollars, but my net proceeds are this much. And it's kind of that disappointing tone that you hear there. It's like, yeah, you look at, you got to take the taxes out. That's what you got to get out of that. And it can be a disappointment if you're not ready for it.
Yeah. You remember probably, as I do, the first time you got your first real paycheck.
Yeah.
And you're like, wait, I'm getting paid X number of dollars per hour or whatever your salary was. So you've all divided out and you get that first paycheck. Like, who's this FICA guy?
Yeah.
It's like, wait, who's taking all my money? What do you mean?
Yes.
It's kind of that same thing, only that's the last paycheck you're going to get. Yes. And then what do you do with it? Right. And that's really where I come in, is what do you do with it?
Yeah. And like you said too, then, you mentioned this as well, the taxability of your long-term income too. After the sale, you mentioned, I'm dumping a bunch of money into a 401k. Well, that is all taxable coming out, but there are other things, just like for the business owners getting ready to sell, that you can do prior to make some of that income not taxable.
That's right. And one of the misnomers, so I just want to mention this, right, is that, well, yeah, I know all about the Roth. I know all about the Roth, but I'm limited to, if I'm over 50, $8,000, or I can, maybe they know, oh, I could convert it, but then I still have to pay the taxes. Well, how much do you convert and when do you convert? But that's just one. The Roth is just one thing. There are lots of other ways to not get around the tax issue, but to mitigate the tax issue. We will pay our taxes, but there's no reason to pay more than you should.
Yes. And that is really what it is. It's not about skirting taxes. It's about using your available means to mitigate and reduce the amount of total taxes that you have to pay.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So taxability is one thing when we're talking about business owners and their exit and some of the things that they could do. What's one other that you think could help them?
I think it goes back to, what am I going to do with it? And realizing that it's not cash that is king. You'll hear me say this a lot in my podcast. Cash is not king. Cash flow is king. And creating that cash flow in the right way, because if you sell maybe a $2 million business, you may want to increase that a little bit. You may want to, you feel like you need 3 million to retire comfortably, right? If you sell a 50 or $100 million business, you know what you're mainly concerned about? Keeping it. Right? You want to keep it. You don't necessarily need to purchase the latest hot stock that's out there and grow this thing even bigger. What you need is consistent cash flow so that you can go do what you want to do. And so that cash flow and managing that and making sure you still have a paycheck. Yeah. You convert that asset into a paycheck for life, for the rest of your life. And maybe you create a paycheck for your family or for a charitable organization or whatever you'd like.
Yeah. And that's one of the things too. You bring up a great point. As over the years, we've seen that a lot, that people, and we're not financial planners, right? We just see who they work with and what they do. But if you really want to put some of your money into philanthropic causes, starting that, planning for that early, again, like everything else, it just multiplies the amount that you can help those organizations when you get ready for that exit. It's amazing how that can do that. So if you're one of those owners that's like, listen, I've got what I need. My family's going to have what I need. They don't need all that. I want to help this organization. Those organizations will benefit from this planning ahead of time.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And you can not just, gift to those organizations. You can create a charitable remainder trust that lives on for an extremely long period of time. It's not forever, but I want to say it's like 100 years. I'm not a lawyer. Yeah. You can create that. You can create, you can multiply by using a life insurance policy, or, you can give somebody $1 million by investing, in a IUL or whole life policy for maybe, half that. Yeah. And suddenly they're getting all that, and if it's not a charitable organization, not a 501c3, they still get it tax-free because it's life insurance proceeds. I could talk about this stuff for hours and bore everyone to tears, so I won't do that.
Well, I think it's interesting though, as we talk about this and financial planning for a great life after the exit. And part of your life after the exit is to be able to go out and do this stuff with these philanthropic causes. Don't just focus on, I have enough money, I don't really need to do financial planning. Well, yes, you do, because if you want to help those organizations more, whether it's the Boys and Girls Club or your church or whatever the heck you want to help, that is, like you said, a 501c3, they will benefit from this as well. So it's another reason why don't wait too long, and you could, because you can make a much bigger difference.
Yeah. If you look at those big famous families, right? The Rockefellers and some of the other ones that are out there, a lot of them, most big wealthy families, it lasts for maybe one, maybe two generations. If you look at the Rockefellers, still going, because it was set up correctly, and there's a process and a consistency and an execution to it. You can do that even if you're not the Rockefellers and have $1 billion. You can do that with millions of dollars or whatever it is that you have. You can create that
for the long term.
For the long term, exactly.
Yeah. And some of these business owners, it's a shame if you're leaving this opportunity or not taking advantage of this opportunity, because they've given up so much throughout their lives to create these businesses, and they could have an even larger impact if they did this planning.
Yeah. And I don't know about you, but I see, I watch and I help the lawyers and the insurance guys and some of these white collar businesses that have been created, but the ones that I wish I had more of, I've got a couple, but I wish I had more of, are the blue collar guys that they are out there. They're building America, right?
Yep.
And to a large extent, when I was growing up, it was all like, oh, don't go into the trades, get a college degree and all that.
Yeah.
And you look at it, I mean, if you go into the trades now and you have no college debt, which is just ballooned to a crazy number,
yes,
you can be well ahead of those guys. And if they started their own business, they're a great plumber, they're a great pipe fitter, they're a great electrician, whatever it is that they're great at. Normally, not always, normally the last thing on their minds is, how do I sell this business? Or
yes,
how do we do financial planning? But they're making good money, and they've got this really valuable business that they could sell. And I see so many of them, maybe they sell it for probably a quarter.
Yeah.
Or their families have to sell it for maybe a quarter of it because they never thought about it.
Yeah.
They could prepare, because after a while, I don't know about you, but my knees hurt a little bit more when I'm getting up and down. After a while, you may not want to do that for the rest of your life, right?
Yes, and it's right. A lot of the, yes, those kind of companies built America, and they are continuing to build America today. And you see them in the construction companies, you see them in the manufacturing companies. I get to work with a lot of both of those kinds of people, and it really is something when you can talk to somebody, and Susan, she started off as a machinist. Now she owns a machining company and it has 100 employees. And now that's pretty darn cool when you think about that and what we can do in the US. And then to combine that with your resources and how you're helping people with financial planning to really maximize their impact of that as they're preparing and exiting their business is super cool.
Yeah.
Super cool. So, John, if there is any one piece of advice before we leave today, what would you give to a busy professional or business owner listening today?
Do what you do best and call a professional for the rest.
There you go.
That's a little bit of a slogan there, but that's what I would say. And make sure that you're thinking about your taxes, not just today, but in the future. And you're also thinking about your cash flow, not just in the future, but also today. Because your cash flow today, you're your biggest asset when you're in your earning years. But also, if you look at this concept called dollar cost averaging, even if you're in the growth phase of your career, and you're investing more towards growth, having cash flow in your portfolio is still king, because that helps you dollar cost average into those other things. So those were the things that I would leave you with. And like I said, I'm always happy to chat with anyone. And I don't try and sell you anything, but I'll try and add some value.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, John, the other thing I wanted to make sure of too is we once again talk about your book. Mention that to me, because I wrote down the title, and I've Build a Life, Not a Portfolio, available on Amazon. They can go out there and do that. You also have a podcast with the same name. Where can they find that? And make sure I want to.
Yeah, you can go out to our YouTube page, which is @Guardian Rock Wealth. And the podcast is there. It's on Apple. It's on every place you get your podcast. It'll be there. Building Your Life with John Browning, if you want to look for that. And then every morning, if you want to cut through all the noise, I've got a 5-minute, sometimes it goes to 8-9 minutes, but usually it's about 5, 6, 7 minutes long. Just where the markets are, what's going on, and what not to pay any attention to, because it just doesn't matter.
Nice.
On your way to work, whatever, if you want to listen into that, you can find that on any of my social media channels. And there's a place to subscribe on a place called Substack. Again, Building Your Life with John Browning.
Nice, John. Well, thanks you for being here today. And for those of you that came in here late, go back to the beginning, start from the beginning. We were talking with John Browning today from Guardian Rock Wealth. He is a financial and retirement planning expert with a wealth of knowledge here. And just go back and listen to it. And we will be, you just won't be disappointed. I'm just going to say there's a lot of great stuff you shared with people today. And we were talking about financial planning for a great life after the exit. And just thanks for being here today, John.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. This has been great. I enjoyed it.
Good. Well, everyone, we are going to sign out for now, and we'll be back again next week. John, hang out and we'll finish up offline.
All right. Sounds good.